Okay, so having said that, if you do volunteer for the project, what we would like you to do is to identify a river site or sites, you can do more than one, but a site that you are happy to monitor regularly, so roughly weekly, for changes in water level using the CrowdWater app and specifically using that virtual staff gauge option on the app. In relation to the sites that you might choose, I've just listed a hierarchy of sites here. So firstly, if your site has a hydrometric gauge close by, and that hydrometric gauge is working and continuously monitoring flow, that's probably the most useful type of site for us, because then we can compare the data that you gather using the CrowdWater app with the actual flow measurements from the hydrometric gauge at that site. Now, as I said already, there's a limited number of sites that have hydrometric gauges, so it's quite possible, or probably very likely, that the site that you choose to monitor won't have a working hydrometric gauge close by. But there are other sites, and a lot more of these, that have flow estimates from the EPA HydroTool application. So that would be, I suppose, sites the second rung on that hierarchy. If you can find a site that has a flow estimate with the HydroTool application, that would be very useful as well. Now, possibly your site will have neither a hydrometric gauge or a flow estimate with the HydroTool application, but that's okay. You might have a local site that you're interested in, that you've been working on yourself. You might want to track changes in water level at a particular site. We will take any data, even a site that doesn't have a hydrometric gauge or flow estimates. If we can get regular measurements of water level at that site over time, that would be useful for us as well. So whatever you can, or whatever site you can monitor, we would very happily receive your data. In relation to hydrometric gauges, first of all, so if you're trying to find out whether the site that you're interested in has a hydrometric gauge, this is the best website you can visit. So this is the Environmental Protection Agency's mapping system. So I've given the web address there, but it's easy to find if you Google it. And you can look for hydrometric gauges by selecting the correct layer on the map. So I'm just going to try and link to this. It wasn't working this morning, but hopefully it will. Yeah, okay. So this is their mapping system. There's lots of different layers you can add to this map. If you want to find hydrometric gauges, if you pick the water drop-down menu and just select monitoring, you will see there's a layer for hydrometric gauges under monitoring. So if you turn that layer on, you will get all the hydrometric gauges in the country. You can zoom in. I'll just zoom in on a site that I'm familiar with. So just going towards Uachtarard in Galway. Okay, so on the Owenriff River, here running through Uachtarard, we have a couple of hydrometric gauges on that river. If you click in on the gauge, if you select it, it should give you information about it. So I'm just going to drop down there. There will be a link, so HydroNet link, I will just select. So once you select that, it will give you more information about that particular gauge. So in this case, I'll just scroll down a bit. It tells us that the Office of Public Works manages that gauge. It tells us that it's monitoring water level and flow, so that's useful. If it's an Office of Public Works gauge, if you scroll down to the very bottom, you should get a link to their own site. Okay, so just linking through there. And if you scroll down there and click on hydro data, it will give you more information about that gauge. Selecting on year here just to show the records over the preceding year. So this is a graph for flow, and we can see on this gauge that there is a continuous record of flow over the preceding year, and that's very useful. So that they're OPW gauges. Going back to the map, I'm just going to click on this separate gauge on the ONRIF. Okay, and click in on it. Okay, so in this case, it's not managed by the OPW. Owner is Galway County Council. The Environmental Protection Agency have the data. If you scroll down, then there won't be a link. So there's not a link to external data. But what you have here over on the left-hand side is a download button. And if you click that, it gives you options for downloading the data at that site. Now, I'm not going to go into it, but it's not a very big file usually, so it should be easy for you to download. If you look at that file, you should be able to see if there is a flow record at that site. So some of the gauges, even though they say that they're measuring flow and water level, there may be problems with them. They might not have a continuous flow record. So it's worth having a look at the site. If you decide to measure at a particular site and you're not sure if there's a gauge, I'd be happy to advise as well. So, you can contact me through the website and I'll be able to advise you. Okay, so that's a way to find out if your site has a gauge. The second category, whether or not the site might have a flow estimate using the EPA's HydroTool method or application. So again, going into the mapping system again, there are menus, layer menus over on the left-hand side as well. If you click on them, it will expand out this list, a long list of different layers that you can add to the map. So it's the WMS layer option there. So you need a few layers. The layers that you'd need to select on the map are the hydro catchments layer, the river flow estimates HydroTool layer, and the river water bodies layer. So it should be easy to find them. If you just type their names into the search box, you should be able to find them very easily. So you don't need to scroll down all through that list looking for them. Once you do that, once you filter, find them, and turn them on by clicking that button, you should get something like this. So I've zoomed in here around Uachtarard again. As you see, I've selected those three particular layers, and what you will get is all these blue dots signify sites that have estimates of flow using the HydroTool application. So there are a lot more sites with those flow estimates, say, compared to sites with hydrometric gauges. Okay, so that shouldn't be hopefully too difficult to find, but as I said, I'm happy to help anyone. If you have a site you want to monitor, you send me details, I'll be able to give you information about it. Okay, so that's how to find out information about the sites, whether they've got a hydrometric gauge or whether you can find a flow estimate from that site or close to the site. But as I said, if your site doesn't have a gauge or a flow estimate, we will still very happily take data from you if you want to monitor at a different site. Okay, so once you've got your site, what we want you to do is record water levels as often as possible during the study period. So our study period is March to November in 2023. As I said already, based on the work that the research group in the University of Zurich have done, we're recommending that you should be taking measurements once a week, roughly, from your site. Now, obviously, that's quite a long period of time, March to November, to be taking weekly records. If you can't commit to that, even if you could commit to taking records at least once a week during one of our target seasons, so that's spring, summer, and autumn. So spring is March to May, summer, June to August, autumn, September to November, to match in with our own seasons for our samples. So if you could commit to that, or one of those seasons, if you can't commit to the whole 9 months, that would be great as well. But obviously it's more useful for us to get a record over a 9-month period. So if you could do that, that would be great. If there were a couple of weeks you're away, or weeks here and there that you miss out, that's not a major problem. You know, as long as we get as many records as possible, we should be able to get an accurate water level record at the site and then an accurate flow record. And hopefully, as you've seen from those short videos, that it actually doesn't take too long to update. So taking a record every time you visit a site should only be a few minutes. So, you know, if your site is close by and not too far away from you, hopefully that wouldn't be too much work. I just want to mention health and safety as well. So obviously, health and safety is important. We don't want anyone having accidents or injuring themselves. So you should be choosing a safe site. So a site that you're happy to access, that is easy to access, that you can access the riverbank quite easily. There's no risk of you having an accident or injuring yourself. So that should be a consideration when you're choosing your site. Also, you know, a site that you choose could be safe to take measurements at one particular time, but not safe at another time. Maybe water levels have risen by a lot, so it's not safe to access the site, or maybe something else has changed at that site. So if it's not safe at a site, even if you have been monitoring it safely over a number of weeks or months, don't take a record at the site. We prefer gaps in our data than our citizen scientists to get injured. So, you know, safety first when you're recording at a site. In relation to that as well, the CrowdWater app does have information on, you know, health and safety and their terms of service. When you're in the app on your phone, if you click on that icon, it will bring up information. So, you know, they have a disclaimer. Again, what I said, don't record or contribute observations in unsafe conditions. Always take care of your safety first. Project partners, apps platform can't be made responsible for any damage or accidents resulting from using the app or the service. And again, you are volunteering for this project. You're taking on the risk. You know, ATU can't be made responsible for accidents either. So just make sure that you're recording safely and you don't put yourself in danger. So also you should have a look at the terms of use of the app as well.